My water bottle makes embarrassing sound effects.
Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
everybody. Wow. Hey, it's Lucy and Kristen. And we are really glad that you all took some time out of your busy lives and days to take care of yourselves here with us today. And maybe it's your own burnout sensations or symptoms that you've had, or maybe you're like, my significant other seems like they might be able to use some information, so maybe I can help, or teammates or whatever it might be. So whatever brings you here today, we're so glad to have you a part of this presentation. And before you even get started, we got to do this. So you got to go grab your notebook and a pen, because I tried to do that without a pen and it's impossible. Because I was reminded this week by the author James Quick from the book Limitless that when you write down, when you're actively doing that, taking notes, then it actually is going to help you, of course, remember it better, and then also going to help you put that into action after this presentation. So go ahead and just take a moment. And of course, you can go get your own embarrassing water bottle, but we can't hear or see you, so you're safe. And then, as always, we do also want to have you chat with us in the chat box. So Mama Kathy has already chimed in for us. So thanks for getting the conversation going. And if you have any questions or comments, we're going to, of course, be including you in the conversation today. So without any further ado, let's talk about the 3 steps, or as this was originally called, the 3 S's, because who doesn't love a good alliteration, for overcoming burnout. As they say, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. And so often I hear scientists and other people out in the field that are studying what they are interested in because it's impacted their own life. So last month, Kristen and I were like, what are we going to talk about next month? And I'm like, I need to talk about burnout. This is very real. I have been just, in a lot of transition. For anybody that knows, I've recently relocated to South Carolina. And it's just been also exhausting because we're still in this whole pandemic situation and life is still so uncertain. And it's hard. And I thought, gosh, this is so hard for me. And I started talking to other people. And it's like, oh, this is not a me problem. This is, Mom, I'm busy right now. This is a global issue. So that's why we're talking about this today. What's going on in the body? It's like we talk a lot about mental health and how that affects us, but there's actually this physiological component. Kristen, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so our bodies, I'm sure you've heard this analogy, are wired to react like we're being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. And even though our stressors today are nothing like they were before, the body's response system is still the same. And you've probably heard the fight or flight saying. But we can actually fight, flight, freeze, or just give in. So that's kind of what a lot of us are experiencing with COVID fatigue is, our bodies are just kind of on overload from the stress, and maybe we just kind of give in, or we're constantly in, oh no, my phone's ringing, constantly in that reactive mode.
So there's 3 different types of stress that we'll highlight here today, which is talking about that acute stress, where it's like that just initial work stress, like, I'm in a presentation and the phone's ringing, like, just acute. Your body's responds with that, like, what do I do? So that's a really good example of what that a really acute, a brief stress can look like. I had an instance this morning where my son gave me the big eyes and like had something stuck in his throat. I felt it instantly, and people feel it in different places, but often you hear that kind of like pit of the stomach. It feels like your stomach is dropped. Traffic, you get that rising of your negative energy. And then there's this frequent bouts of acute stress where that's that more ongoing work. It might just be because when we've had a lot of stress, then we don't necessarily remember all of our tools for managing it. So then the little things just start to build up and it feels like bigger things. And then there's the chronic ongoing stress, whether it's maybe a sick family member, maybe it's a job loss. And then again, if we're just not dealing with those little stressors, then this can become chronic and it can show up maybe from interrupted sleep issues and other things that we'll talk more about, like what's going on. How do we know if this is an issue for us?
So you might be wondering why we are talking about stress when we normally talk about nutrition. Well, one reason is it's kind of this cycle where the stress can lead us to feeling like we're too exhausted at the end of the day. We don't have time or energy to cook good food. It also raises our cortisol level, which increases cravings. It tells our body, eat all of the high density comfort foods we can. And the bad part of that is those foods are often lacking in nutrients, but what our body really needs for support is a bunch of extra nutrients. And then it can also disrupt our sleep. So I want to hear from you all. I found a really great animation video about stress and the body. Tell me in the comments if that's something you want to watch right now, and we'll show it because it is a great way to really set the stage for why these things are really important for our nutrition, even though they seem kind of unrelated in a way. So let us know in the comments. Say yes if you want to watch the animation. Thomas says sure. All right, we'll go ahead and try it out.
Yes. All right, Kristen says yes.
All right, thank you. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, I hit the white ball.
Enthusiastic, yes.
What happened? Play. No. Play. Ah,
there it is.
Cramming for a test. Trying to get more done than you have time to do.
is there echo for you?
Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous. But when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury, but chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code. And they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
Sorry about the audio in the beginning. So all that to say that stress definitely, there's a lot of stuff going on in our bodies when we experience that stress. And, back to this part where it increases cravings, when we have a stressful event, it's not uncommon that we're reaching for food because as kids or whatever, if maybe you went to the doctor, you got a sucker, or if you had a bad day, you, what's happening? Let me see. There we go. I just started a poll so you can tell us, were you kind of taught in a way that food was comfort? Hopefully y'all can see that poll on the right to vote on that. And while you do that, there's a saying that neurons that fire together wire together. So if we have an experience where our bodies felt that stress and then we felt the relaxation or reward signal from eating something like ice cream, then that is going to stay as that connection. And when we feel stressed, it can then become a trigger that, oh yeah, we need ice cream to feel good again. So it's common to do that. And what we can do to counteract that is make sure we have a toolbox full of other things besides food or in addition to food that we can also go to and make those connections strong as well.
That's right. That's what the rest of our talk is about today. So despite the not so great news from Ted, we are going to talk about that toolbox. And that's something that Kristen and I are always talking about, but we're going to go back to basics. So yeah, it's like, how do we go from this stress state that a lot of us are experiencing to how about what's next, so the first step is going to be that self-awareness piece. And a lot of times, well, I think we all like to think that we're self-aware. From some research that I was getting into this past couple of weeks, Tasha Urich and her team out of UCLA were studying these, what they called self-awareness unicorns, because a lot of people want to believe, like up to 95% of us think that we're self-aware. But in order for that to be true, they asked a series of questions, and then they asked the people's partners a series of questions, and it had to match up for them to end up being like self-aware unicorns that they were identified. And what's interesting, is there's so many reasons that we're not always self-aware, right? Like maybe it's wow, I was really hungry, or I've just been under like a lot of work pressure, and or I'm just really tired, or whatever it might be. So it's not like, oh, shame on you, you haven't been self-aware. It's that opportunity to fine tune and figuring out, what does that mean and how do I do it? Okay, so first is recognizing that self-awareness is not like always that you're happy and sunshine and butterflies. A lot of people think that I'm that way. And so there's pressure for me to be that way. But I don't always feel like smiling and being joyful. Sometimes I'm just sad, like moving to a new state. That was a lot of sadness. And recognizing in self-awareness that because sadness is not a feeling that I really enjoy, that there's a lot of temptation for me to just kind of numb it, get really busy. I would have loved to just be really busy this last month so I didn't have to think about and feel the sadness. But that wouldn't have helped because it was going to be there no matter what. And sometimes, we're stuffing it down with food or beverages or whatever it might be. So if you have any therapist friends in your life, or if you've been to therapy, then perhaps you've heard the phrase, the only way through is through. So with self-awareness, it's just that opportunity to recognize what you're feeling and to allow yourself to have the permission and the space. That piece is really important, holding space for processing our feelings. And let's see, is it on the next slide or did I forget that? Oh, yeah. So a lot of times people think like, oh, being self-aware means I'm being selfish, and I'm not the kind of person that's just going to think about myself all the time. First of all, I would laugh because you're human. But more importantly is that it's not thinking about yourself all the time. It's really the next level of thinking about how you're thinking of things. So a good example is or a couple examples is if you were to get like an unsettling diagnosis from the doctor, some people their brains might just go to this like, why me? Why did this happen? And those why questions, when we ask why, that can often lead to depression. It can lead to that inner critic becoming more just louder. And then that sends us down the spiral of maybe feeling down or otherwise just being hard on ourselves. So what they found in their research with the self-awareness unicorns is that a better question to ask, or better questions to ask, are the what questions. So for instance, if it's like, oh, hey, I had a coaching session with Kristen last week and I told her I was going to pack my lunch and take it with me to work each day. And I packed my lunch, but I forgot it when I left the door. And like, why am I always forgetting this? Like, why? It's funny because I was like, another what question would be like, what's wrong with me? That's not the kind of what questions we're going for here. But instead it's thinking like, okay, what can I do to help me remember to grab my lunch? Or how can I remind myself, or how can I set up a reminder to remember to do this? What can I learn from this mistake that I made? So the important piece here is to just start to tune in and recognize those initial thoughts, and when the unhelpful questions or that inner critic might be coming up for you, because then we can start to work on reframing and tapping into other tools. So what's going to help us, or how can we be more self-aware? Well, I'm glad you asked. So first, it's going to be an exercise. Our first exercise for today, it is a workshop, so I want you all to play along. So if you're eating or doing something else, just come join us for a minute. Maybe type a little 1 into the chat box to let us know that you're participating. And I want you to just close your eyes, maybe shake out your hands or whatever. Close your eyes and just take a nice deep breath in through the nose. And then exhale through the nose or mouth. And notice, it's always nice if you can kind of be aware of that moment before where you kind of feel your body. You're like, wow, ooh, I'm really tense. And then you take that breath in, and almost instantly, right? Your muscles start to relax, and your mind becomes present to this moment that we're in. Another exercise that I like is to just ask myself, where am I? I was talking to Kristen yesterday. We were preparing for this presentation, and I was feeling those nerves in my tummy as we're talking about it. And then I was like, yeah, and this question, she's like, what? And I'm like, right. Like, I'm sitting in my bedroom, and it's bright, and I'm talking to someone I love, and I'm just here hanging out. And then instantly my stomach relaxed just from talking and saying where I was, where am I? It brought me to that moment, and my body was able to be like, oh yeah, I don't need to be ready to fight or flight right now. I'm totally safe. I'm comfortable. All is well. So that deep breath, where am I? 2 good places to start for just bringing yourself into some self-awareness, because really that goal is not to be self-aware 100% of the time. That's not real life. But if we can become more aware of where we are, how we're doing throughout the day. I had a client, she set it up with her team where for 1 week, every hour she was texting them to ask that question of, where are you? What are you doing? And I think it was, are you is this joyful, or is this helpful, or something like that? And so that just trained them to start to ask that and check in with themselves. And then again, back to that previous slide of asking those what questions when we start to feel stuck, or start to have that inner critic tension building up.
And I'll add, in addition to the what questions Lucy mentioned before, what can I learn from this? Or what can I do differently next time? I think it's also great to ask, just similar to where am I, what just happened? What am I feeling? And acknowledging those emotions that come up. And I was talking to Lucy yesterday when we were practicing about emotional freedom techniques, which is tapping, and how I love that this technique really helps you go through those emotions. And oftentimes we think positive thinking is the way out of negative thinking. But if we forgot our lunchbox and we're really upset about it, we can still feel frustrated. We don't have to say, why did I do that? We can say, oh, what am I feeling right now? And then we can tap about that. Mm-hmm. Tapping is just simply tapping on different points of the body as you go through those negative emotions. So even though I'm so frustrated that I left my lunchbox, I love and accept myself. And then you go through and you feel that frustration. So whether or not you do the tapping or you just ask yourself what I'm feeling, you're naming to tame it. You're naming the emotion to tame it a little bit. And that's a big piece of self-awareness as well.
Yes. Thank you, Brene Brown. I think she was the one that introduced us the name it to tame it.
All right. So that is the first one. Let's move on to the second step.
So our second S, so we've talked about self-awareness. Now we need to talk about self-compassion. Self-compassion. What in the world is that? It's kind of just as it sounds. It's that opportunity to be a friend to yourself. So the same compassion that you want to give to your little furry friends, pets, or your children, or your mom, your spouse, whomever. We want to turn that inward and be that for ourselves. It sounds a little ooey gooey for people that might not be as into the self-help books as Kristen and I are. But there's actually a lot of research behind it. And I really appreciate Kristen put this together because so often our human brain being wired for that negativity bias, it tells us that if you're not hard on yourself, then you're not going to reach your goals. You're not going to have friends. You're not going to be able to reach your, or to get that promotion or run that marathon or whatever it might be. So we think that we need to be mean to ourselves. But as Kristen Neff, the author of the book Self-Compassion, tells us, there's actually 3 important pieces of why we should choose self-compassion instead of that inner critic.
Yeah, and going along with that example of, taking the time to make your lunch and then forgetting to bring it to work. That's suffering, right? You're frustrated and you now have to have another plan for lunch. So self-compassion would be being warm and understanding towards yourself in the same way you would a friend. Like, it happens. It's okay. It was a mistake. And then the common humanity piece is knowing that we all make mistakes and it's just part of the human experience to be inadequate and to have mistakes and suffering sometimes. So knowing that we're not alone. And then mindfulness. So observing those thoughts and feelings as they are without trying to suppress or deny them, just like we were speaking about previously. So why is this important? Well, Lucy mentioned the research, and this is what it says. If we are self-critical and we think, oh, I've got to be self-critical to meet my goals, it's actually the opposite. The self-critic can fire up that stress response that we don't want. It'll make us more likely to be anxious and depressed. We have lower self-confidence. A fear of failure can lead us to not even try to meet our goals or not try again, especially when we mess up. So we get stuck with that self-critic. But on the other hand, the research shows us that people who use self-compassion can accept failure as inevitable and sees it as a teacher. Then they move forward. They have more intrinsic motivation, which is, personal motivation from the inside. They have more positive emotions that they experience, and they actually achieve their goals. So even though it sounds woo-woo and like self-indulgent to use self-compassion when you do it the right way, it's not that we're saying go watch Oprah reruns all day and eat ice cream. It's,
At least not
it's
every day.
self-kindness, the common humanity, and the mindfulness approach to it.
Yeah, it's fascinating too, talking about this. It's like for some of us, we were raised in environments where this was taught from an early age. My mom, she, I don't think she was like anti the word failure, but we didn't use the word failure in my house growing up. It was always a learning opportunity. It became very like sarcastic, like, yeah, a really great learning opportunity today. But it helped, it helped wire my brain to those words of learning. It's like, oh yeah, that didn't work. What did I learn from it? So some of us were lucky enough to be raised in that kind of environment, and some of us have to learn it now as grown-ups. And just know that it's never too late to start rewiring. So how do we do this? All right. Okay, ready for the next exercise? You can type a 2 in the box if you're going to join us. And I will do it too. So this one is a stand-up one. So I don't know if you'll be able to see me, but everybody, I want you to stand up, because that opportunity to realize, like, oh, when we're in motion, when we move our bodies, even just simply going from a seated position to a standing position, it's now engaging a different part of your brain, right? So whatever it is that might be like upsetting you, right? Maybe you're in the car and you're just ruminating, then being able to either stop and get out, or just know that when you get out, you can do this simple little exercise. This was from Dr. James Gordon. He wrote the book Taming Trauma. And what he had his audience do was just, you relax your arms down next to your side, and then you kind of bounce on your feet and you shake your shoulders out and you just wiggle it out. Isn't that just the silliest thing ever? So if it didn't work, then, and you're not giggling to yourself, then I don't know what to tell you. But it's fascinating how movement is a really great way to knock us out of that space of, maybe ruminating, or, and then just engage that different part of your brain. Of course, we can also come back to the breath. So if you're in a car or you're in a space where you maybe not able to get up and move your body, then bringing yourself back to the breath. And what I like to do for myself is I bring my hand to my chest. Like I was having a lot of, the imposter syndrome earlier this week, as we got ready for this presentation. And I just noticed like that thought of like, who are you to talk about mental health? You're a dietitian. And I recognized it and I called it out, right? So the name it to tame it, that awareness piece, I called it out like, oh, I'm having some imposter syndrome going on. Okay. And then for me, I watched some motivational videos. So Simon Sinek is one of the mentors that I follow. And it's that like, okay, honey, you're just really feeling stressed, feeling a little nervous about this presentation. It's okay. Simon always reminds you that you don't have to be the expert to talk about something. You can be a really enthusiastic student, and people are still going to learn from that. So if you're having this issue yourself, it's like, how can I become the teacher here? And that way it's really going to help you remember, oh yeah, I don't have to be an expert, but maybe I can bring somebody else along on this journey. And start to teach, okay, here's how you do self-compassion. And maybe it's weird at first, like calling, maybe you're not calling yourself honey. That's what resonates for me. But, like one of the guys I listen to, he calls himself dude. It's like, all right, dude, I hear you. You're having a hard day. And that's what works for him. And that's okay too. So that takes us to the opportunity to practice loving kindness, which Kristen's going to tell us more about.
Yeah, so if you are an insider, you're aware of our insider membership benefits. If not, being an insider means you have access to certain programs inside of our portal Healthy. And we have a wonderful loving kindness meditation from a friend of mine who's a meditation teacher. And it's a really great way to not only practice self-compassion, but compassion for others around you that you care about, and even strangers. So it's an excellent tool. I highly recommend you check it out. If you're not an insider, you should consider becoming one. But also, if you do a little bit of Googling, Kristen Neff has some of her own loving kindness meditations that you might want to try out too.
Awesome. All right. I want y'all to type in the chat box, what are the first two S's of our three S's or three steps to avoiding burnout? Because now we're going to move on to number 3, but I want to make sure that you've got it in there. And if you have one takeaway from each of the first two, then you can include that. The first S and the second S are the same word. All right, as you guys work on that, let's talk about the pop quiz. Let's talk about this third one. So support. Thank you, Leah. A+, gold star for Leah. Support. Well, what is support? I mean, there's so many different ways to look at this, and I like that we're in this new era where we're getting support, and not necessarily new, but it's happening with a lot more frequency nowadays, right? Where maybe our support is attending like a Zoom weekly church group, right? So it's like, oh, this is different, and it doesn't feel exactly the same, but it's still that opportunity to connect with people, talk about something that you have in common. Support sometimes for us over here, if I'm having a tough afternoon with the baby, then that might mean that I'm going to hop on a FaceTime call, and we're going to call an auntie or a grandma or a grandpa, and that way they can come in and give me some support just right there virtually. Or maybe we're getting together safely, right? So whatever that feels like to you, maybe it's gathering outdoors with your neighbors and having a little bonfire or sharing a meal. And so first it's the figuring out, how do I do that now, especially since we're still in this whole pandemic situation, and sometimes we're trying to be safe, and then we end up becoming antisocial, or not engaging with our support group the way that we did before. Anything else to add to that, Kristen? All right, so we know what it is. Pretty sure you guys know why it's important, but man, this statistic that Kristen shared was mind-blowing about the cigarettes.
Yeah, so a health survey done by Cigna revealed that so many of us, despite like social media supposedly helping us stay connected, we're feeling very lonely, and that is impacting our health. The medical doctor wrote this in the report, that loneliness has the same impact on mortality as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So making it more dangerous than obesity, and that's right, like right up there with a bad smoking habit. And 54% of the study respondents said that they feel no one knows them well, and that they have a lack of companionship. So social support is a key component to feeling healthy and preventing the same things we were wanting to prevent with good nutrition.
Mhm. Right. It's fascinating to me how many people I've talked to where we talk about the 5 keys to behavior change. And one of those key pieces being that social support and feeling like you have peers that are on the journey with you. And I've had more clients than not say that that's one of their lowest, that ends up being their lowest score because they just, yeah, they don't feel like anybody maybe cares about their health and wellness the same way that they do, or at the same, they might be busy on the diet roller coaster. And so, um, anyhow, that's something where it's maybe you're not lonely all the time, but there's certain areas that you might have loneliness, and finding support groups for those could be really important.
I love the activity that you have to help us kind of look at what do we have in our social support and where might these gaps need to be filled.
Perfect. All right. So good segue into the how. This one you will need your pen and paper, or since you might be on the computer, then you could do this on the computer as well. But you're going to, I would show you. Oh, here we go. So everybody with your handy dandy notebook, you're just going to draw a tic-tac-toe box. In case you don't know, that's the tic-tac-toe box. So just do your 2 lines up, 2 lines over, and then this is going to be a little fill in the blank. So to help you identify just who's on your journey and who's your support people, the top row is that people that you maybe look up to for mentorship or for that support. Maybe they're a little further along. Like one of my very best friends, Michelle, she's a therapist and she's done a lot of work on herself. And, she went to school to be a therapist. So she's somebody that I would put up there that when I'm going through something, maybe dealing with sadness, I know that I can call on her. And so she would be that like person that I'm reaching up to, at least in that regard. And then there's going to be people that, like nutrition wise, she wouldn't necessarily be because, well, I'm the nutritionist, right? So, so that would be somebody else. Like Kristen is somebody that I look up to for nutrition support as well. And then there's that. So that's the first row, is who are you kind of able to look up to and reach out to for that guidance. And then the second row are who are your peers, so that it's like for me, I'm on this mom journey now. So I'm always looking for my mom friends when I'm dealing with toddler moments. Today, I literally sent out a text message like, Atlas has a stuffy nose. Should I try to battle it out and suck the boogers out? Or is there another way to deal with this? So, people that are right there on the journey with you, like maybe it's you want to get more active. So you've got a neighbor or a friend that you're going on a weekly walk with. So that's somebody that's on the journey with you. So that's your second row. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say that middle was supposed to be you. I forgot that part. My apologies. So you're supposed to be in the middle of that tic-tac-toe. But if you have 3 people, that's your peer in your peer group, that's awesome. Look at you go, Kristen, using technology. And then the bottom row are people that maybe you're bringing up along the ride, right? So perhaps it's your kid that you're trying to motivate and inspire to eat a little bit more colorful foods. Maybe it is your best friend who has been a little down lately and maybe is showing a lot of that negativity and inner critic coming up. And so you're like, hey, I just learned these exercises from a nutrition presentation. Can I share them with you? So that's those people that you want to bring up and lift up on the journey too. So there is that handy, look at that. Kristen's so awesome. So it's who can you encourage, who are your peers, and who are your mentors or people that you can reach out to for that support. I'd love to know in the chat box if there was anybody like surprising that came to mind, or if you, if you had any surprising discoveries in any of these exercises. Shoot us a little message. Let us know which one are you going to maybe keep around or share with somebody else. And so just to refresh, what were those exercises? Well, you remember our first one, we did just a little mental check-in. Sometimes I'll do this little exercise. I think I got it from Brendan Burchard. And it was, what's my E level? What's my energy level? And that way it's not just, oh, how active am I feeling? It's just like, how am I feeling mentally and emotionally? It's like, I'm kind of at a 5. And then that deep breath of like, okay, self-awareness says a good what question. What could I do to bring my energy level up 1 number? What can I do to get to a 6? It's like, oh, I could really use some water. Or wow, I really have to go to the bathroom. I should probably go take care of that. Something simple. So that self-awareness, that opportunity to check in with the what questions. Our second exercise was getting up and moving our bodies, whether it's just shaking it out or maybe putting on a song and dancing it out. And the third exercise was this grid that helps us to identify who's on the journey with us, who are our support people. And Kristen's typed that out for us as well. Thank you for that. All right. Oh, this one's my favorite. Oops.
Now how do I turn it off?
There we go.
There we go.
Excellent. So one thing also from that book I had mentioned, I believe it's James Gordon was his name, the author of Transforming Trauma. You know, really, I think we can all agree that we've all experienced some trauma this past almost 2 years. And he reminded us that laughter breaks the spell. And it was hilarious because Marie Forleo was interviewing him. And he's just like, let's laugh. And so they just started laughing. And their laughter, it was a little maniacal. And so I just started laughing because I'm like, this is hilarious and a little awkward. So whether it's, looking at silly videos, my husband's always scrolling and he loves the yelling donkey or yelling goats. So whenever he's feeling a little down, then he'll look up the yelling goat videos.
Great idea. I forgot all about those. Instantly makes you crack up.
It does. Hilarious.
Google it now. Well, not now. Google it today.
You can send it. But find those opportunities to laugh. It is, as they say, some of the best medicine, and it can really help snap us out of an otherwise crappy mood.
Absolutely. So, can I intervene real quick before we ask people what their next best step is?
Yes, please.
Because I'm a little selfish right now, and I want to know what our next step should be. So while we have you guys here, what would you like our next workshop to be about? I'm just curious. If you could vote for me, let's see if it works this time. I think it worked, the poll, so you can tell us, do you want to know about winter wellness? Maybe like the nutrients that can help you stay healthy through the flu season and the holidays. Or maybe we can talk about how to avoid the holiday binge, how to avoid binging on all the bad foods. Or if there's something else, let us know. So also let me know in the chat if it worked this time, or it still says that it's ended already.
Oh, we got votes coming in. All right.
Okay. Good.
Ooh, winter wellness. Oh, nice. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that opinion with me. Keep sharing if you haven't already. And then I'll let Lucy get back to the current presentation.
Cool. So as always, we love to encourage that next best step. So, we've talked about these 3 S's for overcoming burnout, and that first piece of just being self-aware. And it's that knowing that, for everything we do, there's that trigger and habit and reward. And maybe there's a habit that's really not serving you lately. If it's you're running out the door and forgetting to grab your lunch, then knowing that, okay, here's a good opportunity to implement a new routine or a new habit, and identifying what's the right trigger. So we're going to need self-awareness to do that. And we love to encourage people to just choose one thing. It's like, maybe you got 5 new great ideas that you wrote down today. I know I did. I've been attending some workshops for a conference this week and taking notes. And now it's like, okay, so I need to go back to my notes and just, circle the big takeaways. Like, what do I want to be sure to remember? So go ahead and do that. What do you want to remember? And if you need a little assistance, then you've got a couple coaches here that would love to be on the journey with you. And also we've got a handy little free gift for just thanks for coming today. So if that's something that you would like, this is a self-care workbook that Kristen beautifully put together. It's got a nice checklist of just good self-care activities to do every day. Some little cups of kindness, so ways that we can take care of ourselves without food. And if you want a copy of that, just say yes, please, in the chat box, and we'll be sure to email that to you.
Actually, I just made it live. I'm sharing it right now so they can grab it right now.
Oh, look at her go. Kristen's on it. So wherever it says, it's not offer? Where? I don't know where.
No, it's a file, and it's currently shared. So we don't know what you guys see, so let us know if it pops up on the bottom that you can download. But it is there. It should be there.
And of course, if you have any questions, definitely, I like this. So Leah said, how to stay committed to nutrition and wellness goals when things are crazy. That's a good one.
I agree. Good idea. And at the end of the year, things do tend to get crazy. I think even this year with the pandemic still being a thing, it's going to not be as slow as last year. I think we'll still try to do things, and it'll make our lives a little busier.
Yes. Yeah. We're like, I will mask up. I will glove up. I will do whatever I have to do just to continue to live my life. We're definitely doing
that social support.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for your input on what we should do next. And let us know what you thought about today's workshop. And if there's, like Lucy said, any way we can support you further.
You can reach us. You can reach us on the website, wellbalancednutrition.com. You can reach us via email, hello@wellbalancednutrition.com. And of course, social media. Kristen keeps us up to date. Thank goodness. We're on Instagram as well as Facebook.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram for some fun reels and stories from Lucy. And then be sure to be a part of our Facebook group, the Nutrition Know-How for Your Well-Balanced Life. If you're not already in that group, come join us, because we talk about produce, and we talk about, Lucy shares her favorite TED Talks in there, and we talk about the Health Geeks podcast. So it's a fun place to be. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming and participating, shaking it out with us.
That's right.
We hope you have a great day.
That's right.
Bye, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Go
Bye,
get to
everybody.
those next meetings. We'll see you next time.
That's right. See you next time.